The need for connection and community is primal, as fundamental as the need for water and food. It's a quote I came across by Dean Ornish, who is an American physician. Today I'm going to introduce you to Glenys Reid. Hi, Glenys.
Hi, Karen.
Glenys is the Managing Director of Chatty Cafés Australia. And I saw a post some time back, and because I create conversations for business owners, I was really interested in what Glenys was doing. Glenys unexpectedly experienced social isolation for the first time in her life back in 2017. But I'll let her tell you a little bit more about the story during our conversation. So how have you been today, Glenys?
I'm good, thank you. Busy with Chatty Cafe.
And I understand that you've been signing people up everywhere. So perhaps before we go on to that, let's go back to the beginning of this journey and tell me a little bit about you and for your involvement with Chatty Cafe.
Oh, before Chatty. Okay.
Just briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. I mean, very professional career, and worked in Australia. Started out in phys ed, and then won a scholarship to Hong Kong. Met some people in Hong Kong who said, "Come to America." Went to America and did my master's, and I was specialising at that point in working with people with disabilities and autism, and focused on that in America. Went for 1 year to do a master's and stayed 15, as you do, and then came home from that and started up a consulting firm. Then moved into Victorian government, worked in Victorian government for 20 years, and then left Victorian government in 2017, and then sort of squirreled around doing a few things, and then started up the charity in 2019. After that period from sort of 2017 into 18, gave me a bit of a different insight, Karen, into what was sort of going on in the community. I think I just had a different lens because I was having those experiences myself.
It's interesting when I often talk about connecting the dots when you go back. So in that time from 2017 and to 2019, what did you find?
My experience was what kept me on the planet was our totally politically incorrect barista, who was quite entertaining, and my gym group, really. So what I would notice is that people were sitting alone in cafes and restaurants, etc., by themselves, and sort of using sort of social props such as their phone or whatever, but they were actually engaging visually with what was going on in the venue, and chat to the barista or the manager or a staff person, etc. But interestingly, not reach out across to the next table where someone was also sitting alone. I found that if I just sort of used something that was sort of amusing or happening in a cafe, for example, at the time, and get their attention and say, oh, my goodness, did you see that? You were suddenly chatting, and half an hour later you were still chatting. And they were clearly, really happy to engage and tell you a bit about their story. So it did give me the idea to start up an organisation I was going to call it Coffee Connect, but I couldn't get that business name, and simultaneously someone said there's something in the UK like that, and they sent me a link, and it's all gone from there. Informal partnership with the UK office for Chatty Cafe, and started in Australia in October 2019, and here we are through bushfires and COVID. Perfect storm to get up a charity that involved hospitality venues to be open. Everything was closed, locked down, takeaway, density limits, 5 kilometres. So all of that sort of had a huge impact. But we're still here and growing.
Well, I suppose, and we can certainly talk a bit more about it, but it's become even more evident because of those experiences how important connection is. But
Mm,
just going back to before what you were saying, and we spoke a little bit about this, about people sitting alone in cafes. And
mm.
my mother was the best friends with everybody in her local shopping centre. And she would go down and she knew the name of the newsagent and the pharmacist
Exactly.
and all that.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law used to be 93 and walk up to Church Street and sit in the cafe for the morning reading her paper and knowing the cafe people and
Mm,
having a coffee, and it was very much her social
mm,
outreach. So you're so right that
mm.
just being able to be out. So when things changed with COVID and people couldn't go out, uh, there were so many people who were experiencing
Yeah.
loneliness and disconnection, weren't
It,
there?
yeah, look, it's been a fascinating ride so far, journey for me on this, as for some of the fantastic volunteers we've got. But it has been, I remember at one cafe, and the lady said, she said, "I'm strong, I've got a partner, I was at home." And she said, "I just didn't cope." She said, "I have never felt so lonely." She said, "I didn't know what was happening to me." She said, "It was very, very scary." She said, "My husband was very, very concerned for me." And she said, I couldn't believe how I reacted to that level of social isolation, and the experience of loneliness. So, it struck a lot of people who would have never sort of thought that they were going
Mm.
to be impacted like that. And I think the mental health issues that have surfaced as a result. The mental health system, certainly in Victoria, is under severe stress in terms of being able to meet the needs. Sort of this surge in concerns, mental health of people of all ages, all demographics, all ages, all genders, all preferences.
Mm.
Just yeah, been really, really surprising. And as you say in your sort of opening comment, social connection is just incredibly important, and this has just totally highlighted it. Absolutely.
It has. It has. I think I've always been conscious of it, but living the experience is another thing altogether. And the business community that I run for professionals and business owners to come together to network. Just recently, one of our members talked about being an international immigrant, and he'd had a death in the family, and he felt very isolated. And we
Mm,
actually were his community and like his family, which was very. A lovely thing to hear that we were able to support him in that way. But people felt like that when they lived here permanently in Australia, that they were cut off from their friends and their family as well.
mm,
So
yeah.
it's
I
been
mean,
intense.
particularly for those of us that were, had sort of 5 kilometre, you can't go anywhere. I'm just very, very sad in terms of just every age group. Young children who were starting school missed all that socialisation. The kids
Mm,
transferring into high school, the high school students transferring into university, mums with babies who couldn't get family help, people who, as you say, sort of had deaths in the family and couldn't sort of do closure the way that we're used to, etc.
mm,
And just older people who were potentially, some people, living alone and again completely isolated for weeks and weeks on end
mm.
without technical skills, so they couldn't jump on Zoom, or they don't know how to text. These sorts of situations. It has been profound. It has really been profound.
Yes, and I know you've been talking to a lot of local councils about Chatty Cafe, but are they aware of all the issues that are going on in their communities, and how are they working towards making an impact and contributing back?
Yeah, no, I think it's very, very front of mind. It's front of mind for local government areas, for state government and federal government. There's no question. But certainly councils, the ones that we're in touch with, or people that have contacted me, the councils themselves are definitely focusing on loneliness and social isolation, and turning it around in terms of promoting it as building connections, and enabling people to connect, and social inclusion
Mm,
concept. So there's still an incredible stigma on the word loneliness, which I'd love it if we all sort of start talking about it as we did when we started to open up about mental health, talk about loneliness, and most people in their lives are going to experience an episode of it unexpectedly or because of circumstance and sort of a kind of an element that would probably go along with whatever that circumstance was. But loneliness is going to affect most people in their life, and it's about starting to allow that to be discussed in such a way that it's not the stigma that it has.
No, because it's not a weakness. It's a condition, isn't it? That you find yourself in at times in your life. So yeah. So have you got any tips for people that are feeling that way other than joining Chatty Cafe? Find out where we'll talk more about that too. But if someone is feeling that way and they, are struggling to get out of bed and the day feels really lonely and empty, and what are some of the ways when you were experiencing that sort of feeling yourself between careers and finding your new purpose and drive? How did you combat it?
Once again, my gym group, get out of bed, get out and exercise, and be out there for sunrise or close to sunrise, and engage with your gym group. We're lucky we've got an amazing gym group that's been socially connected for many years. So there was that social connection piece. Have a routine if possible. Don't lie in bed. Get up and reach out as much as possible, as brave as you can be, just to reach out. And you'd be amazed. People were saying, they'd walk past houses. People have made amazing connections. We've got one group at a deli, and a whole bunch of primarily fellas got together, standing on their sidewalk, getting takeaway from their local deli. And that group has continued past and beyond COVID. It meets now on a regular basis, etc. People have talked about walking by their neighbours' houses who they'd never spoken to and just starting to have a chat, and then having that chat on a regular basis. So it's just I'm not. I do have a background in counselling and psychology, but I'm not a psychiatrist or whatever in terms of. But loneliness and social isolation will create and can create both physical and mental issues, including depression and anxiety. So it is about how to manage those and reaching out, whether it's to professionals or to family, or to caring, community-focused neighbours or hospitality venues, such as your local cafe or restaurant or neighbourhood house, community centres, libraries, those sorts of people who are community-focused and try and engage.
During that period when we were in lockdown, I did one of my first podcasts with women on walks, which was with Annie Vickers-Willis, and it's a Facebook group. And at that point in time, there were about 1,900 people in the group, and now I think it's it's into the thousands. But she kept a lot of people in the community going by setting them tasks to go for walks, because before COVID, she'd plot out a walk and they would go off on a day trip or something like that. But she set up a thing where today we're going to look for red letter boxes, or we're going to look for iron gates, and post your photos. And it was inspirational. And as I say, it's one of my early podcasts. But that sort of people, finding someone who's going to be a bit of a driver and a leader in the community area is fantastic. So with Chatty Cafe, how did you approach your first cafe? What was the initial thing that you did to get it off the ground?
Well, the first one was actually where the barista was, that had helped entertain me during difficult times. And that's Eclair in Hampton Street. And just approached them and said, would they think about I was starting up a new charity, would they consider being the first venue? And they fabulous, absolutely, as I said, in October 2019. And it's just in terms of that venue, it's a very small venue. So they don't have a lot of sort of spare tables, etc., or a table necessarily. They can have the chatty sign on, which says basically this table's for customers to chat to other customers. keeping community connected. Everybody's welcome. So they have at 1.5 or 2 hours, we have a volunteer at that particular venue, and we just encourage people to, if they're there by themselves, we might encourage them, if the management's comfortable with that, to say, would you like to come and have a chat? Or we might even go to their table and say, would you like to have a chat? I've got one volunteer who's fantastic, the national volunteer ambassador, Helen, and she just picks up her table sign, and takes it to their sign and sits down and has a chat with people. So, it started there. And then, of course, as I said, we hit lockdowns and whatever. So we kept losing momentum. Every lockdown, we'd keep losing momentum, and then we'd have to start up again. So it's been difficult. We have now over 120 venues across Victoria, and 50% of those would be neighbourhood houses and community centres and libraries. And we've also now got a growing number of aged care residences. We've got wine bars, cafes, restaurants. So it's quite varied. And you were referring to your the lady who drove who sort of started up the whole talking
group, yes,
walking group, and we've even got groups coming to us and saying, could we have a walk and talk chatty? It's like, well, of course you can have a walk and talk. Any way you can engage people and have conversation and be enjoying yourself and have a fun conversation. Your idea of the games and red cars or iron gates or anything like that gets people conversing. We do say to our volunteers, we do say two things. One is, you are not psychiatrists, psychologists or counsellors. We understand that you're there just to have a respectful, enjoyable conversation. But we do say to them, probably, unless everybody's aligned around the table, Karen, stay away from politics and religion. Okay? As much as possible. Stay away from those areas. If it starts to get difficult at the table, oh, yes.
It's a no-go zone.
Yeah, exactly. What else are you going to do? Yeah, so, so look, Chatty Cafe can be, we've got intergenerational groups. We've got one school's working with us, grade 4 kids, meeting up with older people and playing games while they're hanging out with them, etc. Look, the aged care residences, with COVID, if we can just manage COVID, and volunteers going in to talk to residents,
yes,
or those residents coming out and going to chatty venues. And the third option is, when it's appropriate, is the public being invited into those aged care residences themselves to chat to residents who might want to have that opportunity to have a chat.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, I love a good chat. I think that's why I think that's why I do what I do now. Today I was asked to think about where'd you start, and I'm thinking, well, I suppose as a child I used to always be talking to everybody in the camping ground when we went on holidays, and if my parents were looking for me, I was off talking to somebody. So I guess it's just part of my DNA. So. But it's interesting because I was at a lunch just recently and talking to the man that was next to me who I'd never met before. And as the conversation went on, we had a friend of his in common. In fact, the man that I knew had been this man's best man. So you never know where a conversation, what you're going to uncover in a conversation in the most amazing way. So
it is that whole 2 degrees of separation, isn't it? You'd be amazed how quickly you find out there's a connection. But it sounds to me, Karen, like you make a great chatterer. I think you need to volunteer for Chatty Cafe.
It's crossed my mind. It's crossed my mind.
I think I've got to recruit you.
I could bring my cards. And tell me, how can people find out where the Chatty Cafes are?
Well, this is some of the other difficulty, obviously through the website, and you go on and it says find your table, or have a chat, want to chat, and you go on there and put in your postcode or the suburb or whatever, and it'll pop up with what's in that area and on a map. We're just having the website rebuilt at the moment to make it a bit more user-friendly, so that people, there's a lot of dots, as you can imagine, with 120 venues in Victoria, there's a lot of dots on that map.
Yes.
But just to be able to sort of click on something that sort of show me the venues and just have it drop down. Also Facebook, obviously social media. We've got some information on Instagram. And what we're trying to do is work with areas so that for the people that are not technically inclined, how can they get a current listing of where all the venues are? If you go into the website and you put Victoria, everything that's in Victoria comes up, which is great, and you can print that table off. But for people who are, not technically inclined these days, how do you get and let people know how to find it? And you can do that. I try and do that. For example, we've got one community centre that has about 40 people come once a week, and I intermittently sort of run off the sheet of what's in the area, because people do say, where else can I go? And so they, be able to hand them a sheet that says these are all the venues. But it is difficult. It's become a technical world that has, in many ways, socially isolated a lot of people.
Yes.
By
Yes.
that.
I suppose that's where local councils are very useful, though, too, aren't they? Because if you could have a flyer of the chatties that are in that particular area, maybe people could go to their local council and be able to pick up the flyer to pass on, or the local library or something like that, so that they could know they could get a list at one of those things. But we just expect everybody to have a mobile phone or a computer, and off subject slightly, but I've heard that that's one of the hugest issues with homelessness, because if you don't have a postal address, how can anybody send you a letter to say you've got a job? Or how can you write a resume? You don't have a laptop and you have to wait to go to the library. So sometimes we have to think about things from another person's perspective, and it's not as easy or as simple as we often think it is. So there may be people who are listening here that have got a favourite barista, but there's no Chatty Cafe happening there at the moment, and they think it's a great idea. So what are the steps that they should take?
Chat to that venue, that barista, the managers or the owners about the Chatty Cafe program, and how it's working to connect community and provide opportunities for people to socially interact and be included, and have a chat to the management. If possible, a lot of growth for Chatty is word of mouth. It's organic growth by people sharing and talking about it. They can contact us via the website, once again, via the website, or Facebook, or a letter to me, I guess.
Yes.
To our PO Box 307, Hampton, and just tell us, and we can always contact that venue and see if they're interested, send them some promotional material to see if they're interested, and then the venue can sign up on the website, and they decide if they want to volunteer or not, and we try and best as we can make a volunteer available that we work with, and it just goes from there. If someone is interested, the other option for people is, of course, to come to our venues, and if there's a volunteer there, talk to that volunteer about another location, and the volunteer can pass it on to those of us working in the admin area.
Sure. So what's your big vision, Glenys?
Big vision. The mission of Chatty is to have pretty much every social and hospitality venue across Australia have a chatty table, be part of the program, have the sticker on the window that people, when they're travelling, can see which of the venues are community focused, and go in there and know that they will have a chatty table time. It may be only 1 hour or 2 hours a day, or it may be a table that's got the chatty sign on it all day, every day, and be able to go in there and feel that they would be welcome, and that they would be some opportunity to chat to other customers that might be in there. Not always by themselves, just chat to people, and an openness and a willingness to embrace community, and be kind. be kind. And I do want to give a shout out. I must say, you mentioned councils before, Karen. We've had enormous support from Bayside Council. That definitely needs a shout out. State government. And now we're getting a little bit of potentially federal government support too. We've had an amazing volunteer community say we'd like to participate despite COVID. So we're creating our own little volunteer community also. And the venues that have signed up, I think of the venues that got us through COVID. I think of them as hospitality heroes. I think they did an amazing job supporting all of us that are standing on those pavements and getting takeaway. And I would like to see them recognised of the social impact that they had during COVID, and some encouragement for them to maintain social impact as we move forward through COVID and moving forward with all the issues that are in the community around mental health, to maintain that social impact awareness.
I think that's very true, because it was really, we would go for our walks, and living in Bayside, half your 5 kilometres is in water. So some of the walks are a bit restrictive, but we would always have a coffee somewhere, and they were always there every time, always. The other thing that you pointed out to me when we had a coffee ourselves was that in a cafe, there's often people sitting by themselves taking up 4 or 5 tables. And, what a great way to free up those tables by encouraging people who would be comfortable to have a conversation in a small group. So I think that's another really positive way of contributing and providing a space for people to gather. At one stage, we did some work doing a case study for some poker venues, and we had to talk to people who were in the poker venues to see what was drawing them in. And in a lot of cases, it was nothing to do with the poker machines at all. It was because they were wanting the company of the people they'd made friends with. And it was a ritual to go and have a cup of tea and a chat. So people need for that connection is huge. So people can help you by spreading the word, most definitely, and volunteering. And what other help do you need?
We want venues to sign up and have those tables available. Customers, as you say, to share the word. Volunteers to assist us in those venues to act as facilitators and icebreakers to sort of just help people feel comfortable to starting conversations. A lot of people that have been isolated are a bit, confidence and self-esteem's a bit low, so give them some confidence and to just sort of start discussing. Everybody's got a journey. We say everybody's got a story to share.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes.
It doesn't. I'm not referring to COVID. I mean, in many cases,
absolutely,
people, the last thing they want to talk about is COVID. But everybody has a story, and if you just take some time to listen, it's just fascinating. Everybody's story is so fascinating. I don't think I've ever come across a boring story yet. It's just fascinating.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I see the world like a kaleidoscope, and we have all these stories that all fit together and move around, and it's fantastic. And I really just am so pleased that you could come and have a conversation with me, because the pillars of this podcast are connection, contribution and community. And I'm also delighted that you're going to come along to the YTM Business Connect in November, where we bring the community together. So before we close off, if you came to one of my events, then we might play Conversations Count, and you could end up on the game board, and the question that you might have to answer is, who's your number one fan?
Golly, who's my number one fan of Chatty?
Doesn't have to be. There's no right or wrong answers with this game. It's just about learning about each other.
No, I think No, I think the number one fan is of Chatty Cafe is the national volunteer ambassador, Helen Bolton. She's been by my side as a part of the team, the two of us driving this since early 2020, and just having her support the concept, etc. Has been just absolutely outstanding. And then probably the next fan is my partner, who's living it with me day by day.
Yeah, Absolutely. And don't we all need that support? I say anything is possible when you have a supportive network. So it's fantastic that you have got these people on a hand. So, as I say, with both our interesting conversation, that's just been wonderful having a conversation with you today. And we will put the details of the Chatty Cafe website onto the blurb, and it will be up and running very easily soon. And you've also put the post office box address there, which was 307
PO Box 307 Hampton, Victoria, 3188. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and we've got, of course, the website's www.chattycafeaustralia.org.au, and we're also on Facebook. And if people want to come to me directly, connect at chattycafeaustralia.org.au. And I found a quote.
Wonderful. So I was just about to ask you for that.
Okay. Yeah, I found it was there. It was, you know, the universe aligned immediately, and it was right there. And it's a quote by Jackie Chan, which says, "Sometimes it takes only one act of kindness and caring to change a person's life."
And ain't that the truth?
Yeah, and it's certainly been my experience with Chatty, is that we've got some profound stories where that has been the reality, and Chatty has played a key role there. So we're out there making a difference, and all I could say is just we're just looking for community kindness, really, to drive this along. And there's heaps and heaps of it. Wonderful Aussies, if they just help reach out to people who are a little bit isolated, and include them, it would make a huge difference.
And you know what? It makes you feel so good inside as well. From a selfish point of view, it's an honor to help somebody else. It absolutely is. So thank you, Glenys. Lovely to talk with you, and I look forward to having a chat with you more, and dinner with you in November.
Marvelous. Look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.